it seems that Israelis are getting prepared to attack Iran. Do you think that they're going to attack Iran? Because recently we had an article in, if I'm not mistaken, Washington Post. They're talking about that Israelis would not attack the nuclear facilities, the oil facilities in Iran. And on the other hand, today the Gallant was talking about, the Israeli Minister of Defense Gallant said that their attack on Iran would affect the countries in the region. What does it mean when you put these two messages together?
I don't know. I mean, the Israelis are doing a lot of posturing right now, and much of that is for political purposes. The United States, Israel has to be careful, because if, for instance, it strikes Iranian oil targets, the Iranian response will be to shut down Middle East oil production, shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and throw the global economy into absolute paralysis. The American economy on the eve of an election will be spinning out of control, will be devastating for the Biden administration and the Harris candidacy. And if Israel thinks that it can do this and not pay a price, I think they're wrong. And I think the Biden administration is trying to impart that on. So you've heard from the Israelis, okay, we won't hit oil targets. Then you've seen them say, well, we're going to hit nuclear targets. That's been their fantasy. Well, they can't hit nuclear targets. We'll just start off with the reality that the most important nuclear targets, Natanz and Firdos, are underground. And so especially Firdos would require the use of nuclear weapons to destroy it. And that would require Israel to, basically end its policy of deliberate ambiguity and acknowledge we are a nuclear power and that we have used nuclear weapons preemptively. This would trigger Iran's withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and the rapid development of a nuclear weapons capability that would be used in retaliation against Israel and destroy Israel. It has the potential of bringing in Russia and the United States as well. So the United States has said, we don't want you to go down this path as well. So this leaves Israel with doing a retaliation that will strike military targets, leadership targets, maybe some non-oil and gas producing infrastructure targets. But Iran has said, if you do this, we will hit you with a saturation attack, 1,000 missiles, maybe 2,000 missiles coming in and taking out Israel's infrastructure itself. And maybe Israel's willing to risk all this in the hopes of dragging the United States into a larger conflict. But to sit there and talk about the region as well. Look, Saudi Arabia, made peace with Iran, the rapprochement. And many other nations are willing to live with Iran because they believe, that Iran is a regional power with, significant military capabilities that can no longer be intimidated, and that rather than continuing to go down the path of, forceful containment, that maybe the best path is to learn how to peacefully coexist. And I think the Israeli attack is designed to demonstrate to the nations of the region that Iran is not a power, a superpower, that it is very vulnerable to attack, and that the nation should reevaluate their stance vis-a-vis Iran. I think the Israelis would also seek to simultaneously engender some sort of domestic unrest similar to what happened in 2023 and the aftermath of the death of that Iranian girl that died in police custody because of the hijab violation. But this is all rhetoric. I mean, we have to see what Israel can do. Hitting Iran is a very difficult proposition. Iran is a long way away. There will be the need for refueling. There will be the need to be able to overcome Iran's air defense system. Israel's never attempted something like this before. Russia may be involved both in terms of manning and directing S-400 missile batteries, but also maybe piloting Su-35 interceptor aircraft, maybe integrating their own AWACS aircraft, which can take off and fly a profile over the Caspian Sea to detect any incoming F-35s, F-22s, F-15Is, and vector Iranian air defense to them. there's no guarantee that Israel is going to be able to pull this off. It's a very, very difficult proposition. So I hear a lot of rhetoric coming out of Israel, but trying to transform that rhetoric into reality is it's a tall order.
Don't you think that putting 100 American soldiers in Israel with this new air defense system would complicate the situation between Iran and Israel, even the United States?
No. First of all, Iran doesn't need to target it. Iran will be able to hit all the sites it wants to hit. There's only 48 interceptors in the THAAD system. If Iran fires 1,000 missiles and all 48 hit, and I'm not much of a mathematician, but that leads me to believe there'd be 952 missiles that are still inbound. And if Iran follows up with another salvo of 1,000 missiles, the THAAD becomes a totally irrelevant system, easily saturated, easily defeated. And again, it's not, new. This is older technology. It's technology that has its roots in the technology of the 70s and the methodologies of the 70s, as opposed to something new that just came out of the American defense industry brain trust. So the THAAD's not going to be a game changer. It's not going to do anything. It's more of a political statement saying we are here. It's also, to be frank, it's part of the standard force protection package. If we're going to be, because we have Americans, there was like 100 Americans to be deployed to Israel full time. We already have Americans deployed to Israel full time. We have a large number of logisticians, cargo handlers that are, living and operating in Nevatim and other airfields to receive incoming American aircraft and offload them. We already have Americans in harm's way. This is just a standard force protection package that's put in when Americans could find themselves potentially in the middle of a conflict. The threat is identified as missiles. Therefore, the counter to the threat will be an anti-missile capability. THAAD is one of the most advanced anti-missile capabilities the United States possesses, so we're deploying it. But it's not going to change anything.
Do you think that the question is, many people are asking, what was the necessity of Israel receiving this new air defense system, this THAAD, the air defense system from the United States? Is that related to what has happened to Nevatim Air Base during that attack, that Iranian attack? Did they destroy any air defense system that Israelis wanted to replace it, or it's an additional aid to Israel?
Well, again, we don't know the full extent of the damage done by the Iranian missiles. We do know that there were 32 separate impact points on Nevatim. We also know that some missiles came in and hit targets that the Iranians say are related to Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 systems, that these impacts took place before the air raid sirens came off, indicating perhaps hypersonic capabilities. So the fact of the matter is the Israelis don't have an air defense system that works. To integrate THAAD it's been tested. As I said, in I think 2019, THAAD was brought in, and they did the integration test that, you have a different kind of radar that's collecting data. How do you integrate that data into the overall data collection that's taking place, inclusive of American overhead satellites, the Aegis ships that are parked off the coast of the Mediterranean and down the Red Sea, their radars. So you have to find a way to plug in this radar data to integrate it in. So they've already tested it. So the THAAD is literally at this point in time a plug-in, plug-out system. It was deployed in October, integrated. So it's not as though the THAAD is going to radically change anything. It's going to plug in and add its capabilities. Now, the 48 interceptors have different intercept parameters, profiles that'll be factored in. So as a threat comes in, your battle management is going to detect and direct intercepts to take place. I think it's an S-band radar, but I could be wrong. Maybe an X-band radar on the THAAD It's going to intercept at a further rate. It's going to be able to direct. So the THAAD is going to add a certain element of intercept capability to the system. And then you have to deconflict. I mean, what's David Sling doing? If THAAD's going to take over this sector, where's David Sling? You don't want them being overlapping sectors, because that's a waste of resources. You don't want to be firing THAAD and David Sling at the same target. So there's deconfliction that has to take place. This has all been factored in. And again, the Iranians aren't worried about this. I really don't think. First of all, the Iranians are smart. I don't know the Iranian battle plan. I don't know, what their thinking is, but I do know this. These are very smart people who are smarter than I am on these issues, and I know how I would plan an attack and the factors that I would put into it. And I'm confident that based upon the plan I could come up with, that I can easily overwhelm every aspect of the Israeli-American air defense umbrella that's been put up there, that it will not stop a concerted attack. And if Scott Ritter can do that thousands of miles removed, sitting in his in his office at home, I think Iranians who possess far better intelligence, who know the full capabilities of their systems, and have designed their systems. Remember, some of these are newer weapons that have been designed specifically for this purpose. For instance, the Fatah 2 is a solid rocket missile specifically designed to strike Israel. I think the Iranians have this problem set covered, and they will, they made their point twice. In Operation True Promise 1, they saturated the air defense. They collected so much intelligence, it's beyond belief. The how the aircraft operated, how the aircraft communicated, how the air defense responded as different levels of threat penetrated deeper and deeper inside Israel. They were able to look at how, the battle space was handed off from from the aircraft firing forward to forward air defense, to intermediate air defense, to final air defense. The Iranians collected everything, and they're very good at this collection. And remember, Hezbollah is collecting intelligence, and Iran is collecting that intelligence on behalf. Hezbollah is collecting on behalf of Iran, and I think Iranian collectors are right there. Syria is collecting intelligence. The Russians are collecting intelligence. This is all being fed back to the Iranians. They had a full intelligence picture of what was going on, how the allies, Israel and their allied nations responded, and they've adapted to it. Operation True Promise 2 was a purely ballistic missile attack that you saw just saturated, boom, and it wasn't even the best missiles Iran has. This time around, Iran is going to be able to, it'll be devastating for the Israelis what will happen if Iran does attack. And THAAD or Israeli Air Defense Arrow 2, 3, David Slings, Patriots, Aegis, SM-3s, they'll be able to intercept a handful of missiles. They're not going to intercept any of the hypersonics. And once the system gets saturated, it's ineffective, and the Iranian missiles are going to be able to hit whatever targets they want to.
In your opinion, if Israel decides to attack Iran, they're going to attack Iran by missiles together with fighter jets? Do we know what type of missiles do they have to attack Iran, in terms of ballistic missiles, hypersonic, supersonic?
The Israelis have the Jericho class missile that they use. That's their primary nuclear delivery vehicle. I believe that it probably has been configured with conventional kinetic penetration warheads to hit hard targets, but probably also maybe some conventional explosives to take out leadership targets. But there's only so many that they have. They don't have thousands of them. They have scores of them. Maybe when they bring out in reserves, they might have a couple hundred of them. That's it. They also have cruise missiles that can be fired from submarines. So they have this German electric submarine is very quiet. Oftentimes is operating in the Red Sea. Believe it can project itself into the Arabian Sea, hover off the coast of Iran undetected, and fire missiles in that way. But then the primary strike vehicle for the Israelis will be aircraft, will be the F-35 or the F-15I. strike aircraft. Your fighter protection will be with F-22s and probably F-16s. Maybe some of the F-16s will also be involved in attacking. I don't know, but that's their primary. But putting together a package like this, there's two scenarios that can be done. One is the stealth scenario. That is that you come in with a small number of aircraft that seek to use surprise and their stealth approach to penetrate rapidly, drop bombs, and get the heck out. You get to do that one time. And then you've got to go to the sustained strike package. And this means you're coming in with what we call during the Gulf War the guerrilla package. I mean, it's a big whole bunch of aircraft coming in. You have to put tankers in the air. You have to provide combat air protection for those tankers. Those tankers have to be rotated out because they themselves are operating away from their bases of operations. So basically, you got to put full-time gas station in the air. And then you've got to cycle airplanes in, get fueled up, and then go in and strike. And as they strike, you need, it's not just the strike aircraft. You need electronic warfare aircraft. You need combat air patrol aircraft to protect against air. You need suppression of enemy air defense aircraft. And so, you've got, there's an air campaign being run that is just that, a campaign. The initial strikes might be to suppress air defense. Then you have to come in and sweep the skies, and then you have to come in and you try to strike. This requires a lot of airplanes flying deep into Iran in a very exposed position. And eventually Iran will adapt to this. And then now we have a strategic air war being fought between Israel and Iran. And Israel, frankly speaking, can't sustain that because the casualties that will be accrued, both in terms of actual combat casualties, but remember, we're talking about aircraft like the F-35, which is notorious in terms of the amount of hours needed to keep it flying. And if you start using the F-35 on, in combat related, the kind of tempo related to combat, pretty soon your entire fleet's going to be down on the ground getting maintained, and now you're limited to what you can go. Everybody who's saying that Israel can do X, Y, and Z on the air, there's a reason why Israel has come to the conclusion that it must have the United States. First of all, to protect the tankers. You're not going to be able to run those gas stations over Iraqi airspace without American protection. The Iranians will get them. They will shoot them down. So now, how do you even begin talking about a sustained air campaign against Iran without American involvement? So if America is not going to be involved, you're basically talking about that one-time stealth attack, pop a couple targets and come out. But that's a one-time trick. And here's the problem. If Iran lives up to its promise, you come in and you bomb. By the time your planes try to land at the airfield that they took off from, that airfield may no longer exist because Iran's not coming in with 200 missiles. Next time they're coming in with 1,000 to 2,000 missiles. And that's a completely different ballgame. So it's just not as easy as everybody thinks it's made out to be.
And last time I talked with Ted Postal, he mentioned how Patriot system is successful against fighter jets. And what do we know about, because he said that against missiles, they're not that much successful as much as they are against fighter jets, and because it's so easy for them to hit the target. And when it comes to the Russian system, S-300, 400, how do you evaluate these air defense systems, and how successful would they be in attacking Israeli fighter jets?
Well, there's two things. One, Israel's plans have been predicated on S-300 type air defense capabilities backed by indigenous Iranian capabilities, with Iranian aircraft vectored in using Iranian command and control capabilities. But if Russia, folds in its AWACS capabilities, the advanced radar capability S-400, well, I'm not saying that Israel can't come up with a solution to that. Look, the S-400 is not perfect. The Ukrainians have, flown, the Scalp missile and the Storm Shadow, over S-400 sites and struck S-400 sites. So it's not the perfect weapon system. But none of those attacks took place without extensive NATO intelligence involvement, meaning the Ukrainians didn't wake up in the morning and go, let's go bomb an S-400 site. To take out the S-400, there were significant inputs made by NATO and the United States on facilitating that attack. Israel could receive those same inputs, but it's going to require them to redo their plan. One of the reasons why Israel may be waiting so long right now is that they have to redo their plans. And it's not just redoing the plans on paper. Their aircraft have to fly the profiles to make sure that the pilots are ready for what's going on. They have to rehearse this. And some of their rehearsals may include actual combat operations. For instance, some of the profiles that Iran is flying into Lebanon, into Syria, may incorporate some of the new tactics that Israel may use against Iran without saying so. But again, the Iranians and the Russians are on the alert for that. They're collecting the intelligence, they're factoring it in. So, this just complicates things. I'm not saying that the S-400 can't shoot down Israeli aircraft. Maybe they can. Probably they can. But if Israel doesn't change its attack parameters to incorporate this new capability, then that's definitely they will shoot down Israeli aircraft, including the F-35. So Israel has to reevaluate the total strike package. And now it complicates things because these tactics may require aircraft to fly, terrain masking profiles for a longer distance. That burns up fuel, which means now you either have to push tankers forward, to fuel off, or you have to change aircraft. So you can't use planes that burn fuel. You have to swap them out for planes that can conserve fuel, and you may lose some capacity there. Planning an airstrike package like this is a very complicated thing. And the Russians providing the Iranians with S-400 electronic warfare and S-35 aircraft with the potential of being backed up by, the Russian AWACS aircraft. These are game changers. It doesn't mean game winners. It means game changers, that Israel will have to change the way it's playing the game if it wants to succeed.
And if you remember, before the conflict in Ukraine started, we had the total the communication between Russia and the United States just stopped, and nobody was talking with the United States in those days after failing to talk with Zelensky. And right now in the Middle East, yesterday the foreign minister of Iran was talking about that they're not having any sort of communication with the United States because they don't see any sort of benefit coming out of these talks. And do you think that, how do you find the situation right now? Do you think it's still under the control? They can control it, or it's getting out of the hand?
It's totally out of control. There's no diplomatic engagement. The United States, look, Biden just recently announced that he wanted to, resume, negotiations over arms control, the Strategic Nuclear Forces arms control. Nobody's going to talk to him. He can't be trusted, first of all. The United States can't be trusted. We've lied from day one. We lie about everything. And we still have a policy that says we want to strategically defeat Russia. Why would Russia agree to negotiate away the one thing that guarantees it will never be strategically defeated, which is the strategic nuclear forces, at a time when the United States still, actively embraces this policy? And even if the United States said, well, we changed the policy, we can't be trusted, we lie. I just want to tell your audience, in 2009, 2010, when the New START treaty was being negotiated between the Obama administration and the the Russian government, the Russians said that, look, we don't want to negotiate this treaty, reduction in nuclear forces without, we have to factor in ballistic missile defense. We're very concerned that if we start lowering the numbers of strategic nuclear forces we have, if you have missile defense, we're going to run into a situation where you have the potential of shooting down more missiles than we have, and that's the end of our nuclear deterrence. And the Obama administration at the time promised, it was then President Medvedev, look, we might be able to get this strategic arms reduction treaty through Congress to get it ratified by the Senate. But if we roll in air defense, air missile defense, we can't get both of those passed. What we will do is, if you do this, trust us. Trust us. The biggest words, and never trust Americans when their lips are moving because they're lying. Trust us. We'll get this treaty done, and then we promise we'll turn to the issue of ballistic missile defense. Anatoly Antonov, who was former Russian ambassador to the United States, just left, was the lead negotiator at that time, and he prevailed upon Medvedev to agree to this. And so they got the new treaty. The United States lied about that too. I mean, we lied about everything. We negotiate in bad faith about, how we do counting, how you pull launch capability out of a submarine or a B-52 bomber. What we did is easily reversible, and we bragged about it. We had generals before Congress saying, don't worry about those numbers, because in a crisis, we can reverse them overnight and get our numbers up really quick. We built this treaty to achieve that. Do you see what I say? We built a treaty designed to reduce nuclear weapons so that we could trick the Russians in rapidly increasing the